Picture this, a packed hearing room, cameras flashing microphones live. Every exchange recorded for the world to see. On one side sits Stephen Miller, a political figure infamous for his sharp tongue and hardline rhetoric. On the other side sits Representative Jasmine Crockett, a freshman lawmaker who has already earned a reputation for her quick wit, sharp legal mind, and unshakable composure. The atmosphere is charged, and before anyone even speaks, you can feel the tension in the air. Miller leans forward, eager to dominate the conversation, his interruptions almost inevitable. Crockett calm but alert knows what's coming. And when it comes, she's ready. What unfolds is not just another political spat. It's something much more important. A battle of narratives, truth against spin, preparation against performance. And the moment Crockett delivers her seventh comeback, the very one that leaves Miller speechless, the story transcends beyond that room. It becomes a symbol of why facts still matter in an era where interruptions and noise often drown out substance. We live in a time where conversations, especially political ones, rarely resemble real dialogue. Too often debates turn into shouting matches with interruptions, replacing arguments and volume, substituting for facts. Stephen Miller, a man whose career has been built on controlling narratives through forceful rhetoric, represents that trend perfectly. His strategy is simple: talk over opponents, disrupt their rhythm, and leave little room for facts to breathe. Jasmine Crockett, however, represents something else, something that feels increasingly rare. She embodies the power of preparation, of refusing to be silenced, and of responding not with equal noise, but with sharper fact-based clarity. That's why this exchange matters, because it wasn't just about who spoke louder. It was about who spoke truer. Over the course of this breakdown, we're going to walk through what happened step by step. You'll see how Miller set the stage with constant interruptions designed to rattle Crockett, how Crockett stayed grounded, refusing to let the noise derail her, the strategy she used to build her case piece by piece, holding her fire until the moment it mattered most. And finally, how her seventh comeback, delivered with precision and proof, didn't just silence Miller, but flipped the power dynamic in the room entirely. Along the way, we'll explore why this moment resonates beyond politics. Because let's face it, we've all dealt with Stephen Millers in our lives. People who interrupt, dominate, and try to control conversations. And we've all wished we could respond like Jasmine Crockett, with confidence, facts, and timing that turn the tables instantly. By the end of this video, you'll not only know what happened in that room, but you'll also understand the deeper lesson in a world where confident fiction often gets the spotlight. It only takes one person with facts to change everything. In a world full of confident fiction, it only takes one person with facts to change everything. That's exactly what Jasmine Crockett demonstrated here. Think about it. 6 interruptions. 6 times. Crockett tried to make her point, and 6 times Miller cut in louder, more forceful, trying to create the illusion of dominance. Each interruption was an attempt to silence her, to send the message that her voice wasn't as important, her facts weren't as strong. But Crockett never broke. She waited, she calculated, and when she delivered her final comeback, the 7th one, the room shifted. Miller's face said it all. Shock, silence, and defeat. This isn't just a story about a hearing. It's a story about power, about resilience, and about the timeless truth that preparation beats bluster. The confrontation between Stephen Miller and Jasmine Crockett didn't happen in a vacuum. By the time Miller cut her off for the first time, the stage was already loaded with history, tension, and expectation. To understand why this moment exploded the way it did, we need to rewind the tape and look closely at what was building beneath the surface. Picture the hearing room. It's not just another sterile government chamber. It's a stage. Rows of committee members sit angled toward the microphones, their stacks of notes neatly arranged. Cameras swivel across the room, eager to catch every raised eyebrow, every heated exchange. Spectators sit shoulder to shoulder, whispering as they wait for fireworks. Reporters hover with pens poised over their notepads, pre-writing headlines they hope will capture the essence of the day. Some expect Miller to dominate. Others hope. Crockett, a relative newcomer compared to Miller's years in the spotlight, will surprise everyone with a strong showing. From the very start, tension is baked into the scene. This isn't just about testimony, it's about performance optics, and who comes out controlling the narrative when the lights dim. Stephen Miller didn't walk into that room unprepared. Say what you will about him, but Miller is a master of one tactic. Control the stage by controlling the flow of conversation. His strategy is almost formulaic. Interrupt early and often to prevent opponents from gathering momentum. Project confidence not necessarily by speaking truth, but by speaking with certainty. Distract with rhetoric, so the audience forgets the original point. Repeat key phrases until they sink in, regardless of whether they're accurate. This isn't accidental. Miller has spent years perfecting this approach, and for many, it works. Interruptions frustrate opponents, make them seem flustered, and create the impression that they can't handle the pressure. It's a performance designed to win perception battles, even if it loses the fact-checking war. And when the hearing began, Miller wasted no time deploying that playbook. But Crockett wasn't just another target. She came into the room, not just prepared, with notes but armed with strategy. She had clearly studied Miller's past appearances, understood his reliance on interruptions, and knew what she'd be up against. Instead of matching his interruptions with her own, she did something different. She let him go. She let him interrupt 6 times. And while to some it might have looked like he was gaining ground, Crockett was doing something far more deliberate. She was letting him write the script of his own downfall. Every time Miller cut her off, he revealed more about his tactics and less about his substance. Every interruption wasn't a victory for him. It was a breadcrumb leading toward the climax of their exchange. This is where most people fall into the trap. When faced with someone like Miller, loud, fast, and relentless, the instinct is to fight fire with fire. Raise your voice. Talk over them. Match their energy. But here's the mistake: when you do that, the conversation becomes a shouting match, and the facts get lost. To the audience, it looks like chaos, not clarity. And in chaos, people like Miller thrive. Crockett didn't fall for it. She knew her job wasn't to win the battle of interruptions. It was to win the war of facts. Going into this exchange, the media and public expectations leaned heavily toward Miller. He was the seasoned political brawler used to hostile arenas. Crockett, though respected for her intelligence and legal expertise, was still relatively new on the national stage. Many assumed she would struggle to match his force of personality. But here's where the underestimation worked in her favor. By expecting less from her, people were caught off guard when she delivered more. Much more. And this wasn't just about Crockett proving herself. It was about proving a larger point: that preparation, substance, and timing can dismantle even the most aggressive style of politics. Let's replay those first 6 interruptions because they set the foundation for what came next. The first cutoff. Miller jumped in almost immediately, setting the tone that he wouldn't let Crockett finish a full thought. It was a power move meant to rattle her. The second interruption. He doubled down this time, repeating one of his signature talking points louder, trying to drown her out. The third interruption. By now, Crockett had barely spoken a full sentence, and observers started wondering if she'd even get a chance to land her points. The fourth interruption. Miller grew bolder, leaning back in his chair with the smugness of someone who thought he had the upper hand. The fifth interruption. Crockett stayed calm, letting him reveal the pattern. The sixth interruption. By now, even spectators in the room were getting restless. The interruptions weren't clever anymore. They were repetitive, predictable, and increasingly hollow. And this is where Crockett found her opening. Because when a tactic becomes predictable, it stops being powerful. By the sixth interruption, you could feel the frustration building, not just in Crockett, but in the room itself. Reporters scribbled notes about Miller's aggression. Spectators shifted in their chairs. Social media observers watching the live stream began to post their reactions. Let her talk. Why does he keep cutting her off? The tension was no longer just between Miller and Crockett. It was between Miller and the audience. And that's when Crockett struck. After being cut off 6 times, Crockett leaned forward. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't match Miller's energy. Instead, she paused, measured, and with just the right amount of edge in her tone, began her comeback. The 7th response that would turn the tables. The room leaned in. The interruptions had been loud, but her calm was louder, and in that moment, you could feel it. The build-up was over. The climax was about to begin. This is the moment where the entire dynamic flipped. What began as Miller's stage was about to become Crockett's courtroom. The interruptions had set the rhythm, but her comeback was about to break it. And when she did, the silence that followed spoke loud, or than all 6 of his interruptions combined. For 6 interruptions straight, Stephen Miller believed he had the upper hand. He had done this before, overpowering opponents with volume repetition and relentless talking points. But what he didn't realize was that Jasmine Crockett wasn't losing ground. She was laying a trap. And when the 7th interruption came, Crockett's response changed everything. The committee room was restless. After 6 interruptions, the frustration wasn't just Crockett's. The audience, both in the chamber and watching online, had grown visibly annoyed. Reporters tapped their pens harder already, scripting stories about Miller's aggression. Viewers on social media clipped each interruption and added captions like, "He won't even let her finish." Committee members exchanged looks, some irritated, some amused. The mood was thick with expectation. Everyone wondered, would Crockett finally push back? Or would Miller walk away with the narrative once again? Miller leaned in, his voice sharp, ready with yet another interruption. He barely let Crockett get 5 words out before he jumped in. But this time she didn't pause. She didn't back down. Instead, Crockett cut clean through his interruption with a voice steady, commanding, and undeniable. "Stephen, I've let you interrupt me 6 times. But here's the difference between us. You repeat slogans. I bring facts." The room froze. For the first time, Miller didn't immediately jump back in. His trademark smirk faltered ever so slightly. Crockett had flipped the script. Instead of appearing overwhelmed by his interruptions, she reframed them as evidence of his weakness. Let's walk through how Crockett dismantled Miller in real time. Acknowledging the pattern. By pointing out that he had interrupted her 6 times, she held up a mirror to his behavior. It wasn't just her word anymore. The audience had witnessed it too. She made the implicit explicit, contrasting saint, ill versus substance. She drew a line between slogans and facts. This wasn't just a jab. It was a framing device. She positioned him as empty rhetoric and herself as the voice of substance, maintaining composure. Crockett didn't shout. She didn't match his aggression. Instead, she used calm to amplify her authority. In a noisy room, quiet power always cuts deeper. Reclaiming the mic. By speaking over his interruption for the first time, she flipped the dynamic. The audience no longer saw Miller as dominant. They saw him silenced. For a moment, Miller tried to regroup. He attempted to jump back in, but this time the interruptions didn't land. The energy had shifted. Every time he tried to talk, Crockett cut through with precision. When he repeated a slogan about chaos at the border, she countered with exact figures from government reports. When he tried to paint her as uninformed, she cited legal precedents with the confidence of a practiced attorney. When he leaned into bluster, she leaned into receipts. The more he talked, the smaller his words seemed. The shift was palpable. Committee members. A few smirked as Crockett landed her points. Even those who weren't politically aligned with her could sense the control she had seized. Reporters. Pens scribbled faster. Headlines changed mid-draft from Miller. Dominates exchange to Crockett. Silences Miller after relentless interruptions. Spectators' murmurs rippled across the audience. Crockett had given them the moment they were waiting for social media. Within minutes, clips of her 7th comeback started trending, captions blazing. This is how you deal with a bully. Crockett's success in that moment wasn't luck. It was strategy. She let the tactic burn out. By allowing 6 interruptions, she let Miller overplay his hand. What once looked assertive now looked desperate. She chose her moment. Timing is everything. By waiting until the 7th interruption, she maximized the dramatic payoff. She reframed the narrative instead of appearing as the victim of interruptions. She transformed them into proof of her opponent's weakness. She centered the facts. Facts became her weapon, in a world where rhetoric often dominates grounding. Herself in specifics gave her credibility. Miller couldn't match Crockett. Didn't just silence Miller. She dismantled him with precision quotes that echoed far beyond the room. Among them, confidence doesn't make you right. Stephen, facts do. You can cut me off all day, but the record won't change, and the record isn't on your side. Every time you interrupt, you prove my point. You don't want people to hear the truth. Each line landed like a strike. Sharp, concise, memorable. What happened in that chamber didn't stay there. Television news networks replayed the exchange, often cutting together Miller's 6 interruptions, followed by Crockett's one-liner. The contrast was devastating. Social media hashtags like Crockett clapback and silence. Miller trended for hours. Short clips racked up millions of views. Commentators, political analysts highlighted her ability to remain calm under fire, framing it as a masterclass in handling aggressive opponents. The narrative wasn't. Miller spoke loudly. It was Crockett. Shut him down. Perhaps the most telling moment wasn't Crockett's words, but the silence afterward. For once, Miller had nothing. The interruptions stopped. The swagger faded. And in politics, silence often says more than words. The confrontation wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a turning point that rippled outward through the media, through public opinion, and into the larger conversation about truth versus rhetoric. Crockett hadn't just silenced Miller. She had exposed a larger truth, that empty interruptions crumble when confronted with calm, prepared facts. When the dust settled from Jasmine Crockett's 7th and silencing comeback, the room was transformed. What had begun as Stephen Miller's aggressive showcase ended as Crockett's defining triumph. But the true weight of the moment wasn't confined to that chamber. It spilled into headlines, social media feeds, and living rooms across the country. The media machine wasted no time. Within hours, cable news networks clipped the entire exchange into digestible segments. Mainstream coverage outlets framed the exchange as a power shift. Lower thirds told the story in bold letters. Crockett shuts down Miller. After 6 interruptions, conservative outlets, some attempted to spin Miller's behavior as forceful debate. But even then, the optics were hard to ignore. Repeated interruptions paired with Crockett's composed response gave her the advantage in the storytelling battle. Headlines. The most common phrasing across platforms centered on the word silence. Phrases like Crockett silences Miller or Miller stunned into silence dominated the media landscape. It was a media framing nightmare for Miller. The narrative was no longer about his talking points. It was about how decisively he had been outmaneuvered. If the media amplified the moment, social media weaponized it. Twitter, X, TikTok, and Instagram were flooded with clips, memes, and commentary. Short clips. The 6 interruptions followed by Crockett's 7th response became a viral format. Some users even set it to music, creating rhythm out of Miller's failed tactics. Memes. A popular meme showed Miller shouting with captions like, slogans contrasted with Crockett calmly labeled facts. Hashtags Crockett vs. Miller silenced and facts over fiction began trending. The internet crowned its winner quickly and overwhelmingly. Crockett wasn't just seen as holding her own. She was celebrated as delivering a masterclass in how to stop a bully in real time. The political establishment also took notice. Democratic leaders. Many praised Crockett for standing firm, highlighting her as a rising star who could handle pressure without folding Republican allies of Miller. Some stayed quiet, recognizing that doubling down would only draw more attention to the embarrassing exchange. Others attempted damage control, reframing Miller as passionate, but their defenses rang hollow. Independent observers, pundits, noted the moment as not just a partisan win, but as a reflection of a broader cultural clash between rhetorical aggression and fact-based rebuttal. Behind closed doors, the exchange was dissected in strategy sessions. For Democrats, it became an example to study and replicate. For Republicans, it was a cautionary tale of what happens when style isn't backed by substance. Ordinary viewers, people not glued to politics every day, were among the most vocal. Supporters of Crockett flooded her social media with encouragement, calling her fearless, sharp, and the calm in the storm. Skeptics of Miller admitted frustration, saying the constant interruptions revealed arrogance more than strength. Neutral observers often echoed the same sentiment. Crockett seemed prepared, while Miller seemed rattled. One viral comment summed it up perfectly. If you can't let someone finish their sentence, maybe it's because you're scared of what they're about to say. The immediate fallout didn't just shape perception, it carried practical consequences. Fundraising boost. Crockett's campaign reportedly saw a surge in donations within 24 hours. Media invitations, talk shows, and podcasts rushed to book Crockett, eager for her to recount the moment and expand on her points. Reputational shift for Miller. The incident added to a growing perception of being more bluster than brilliance. His reputation as an aggressive strategist wasn't destroyed, but it was dented now, paired with the image of being silenced. The immediate aftermath revealed a truth often overlooked in politics. Perception is as powerful as policy. Crockett's victory wasn't just about one-liners or facts, it was about controlling the narrative. By reframing interruptions as weakness, by staying calm when chaos was thrown her way, she won not only the exchange, but the story that followed. Why this moment exploded the way it did? We need to rewind the tape and look closely at what was building beneath the surface. Picture the hearing room. It's not just another sterile government chamber, it's a stage. Rows of committee members sit angled toward the microphones, their stacks of notes neatly arranged. Cameras swivel across the room, eager to catch every raised eyebrow, every heated exchange. Spectators sit shoulder to shoulder, whispering as they wait for fireworks. Reporters hover with pens poised over their notepads. Pre-writing headlines they hope will capture the essence of the day. Some expect Miller to dominate. Others hope Crockett, a relative newcomer compared to Miller's years in the spotlight, will surprise everyone with a strong showing. From the very start, tension is baked into the scene. This isn't just about testimony, it's about performance optics, and who comes out controlling the narrative when the lights dim. Stephen Miller didn't walk into that room unprepared. Say what you will about him, but Miller is a master of one tactic. Control the stage by controlling the flow of conversation. His strategy is almost formulaic. Interrupt early and often to prevent opponents from gathering momentum. Project confidence not necessarily by speaking truth, but by speaking with certainty. Distract with rhetoric, so the audience forgets the original point. Repeat key phrases until they sink in, regardless of whether they're accurate. This isn't accidental. Miller has spent years perfecting this approach, and for many, it works. Interruptions frustrate opponents, make them seem flustered, and create the impression that they can't handle the pressure. It's a performance designed to win perception battles, even if it loses the fact-checking war. And when the hearing began, Miller wasted no time deploying that playbook. But Crockett wasn't just another target. She came into the room, not just prepared, with notes but armed with strategy. She had clearly studied Miller's past appearances, understood his reliance on interruptions, and knew what she'd be up against. Instead of matching his interruptions with her own, she did something different. She let him go. She let him interrupt 6 times. And while to some it might have looked like he was gaining ground, Crockett was doing something far more deliberate. She was letting him write the script of his own downfall. Every time Miller cut her off, he revealed more about his tactics and less about his substance. Every interruption wasn't a victory for him. It was a breadcrumb leading toward the climax of their exchange. This is where most people fall into the trap. When faced with someone like Miller, loud, fast, and relentless, The instinct is to fight fire with fire. Raise your voice. Talk over them. Match their energy. But here's the mistake: when you do that, the conversation becomes a shouting match, and the facts get lost. To the audience, it looks like chaos, not clarity. And in chaos, people like Miller thrive. Crockett didn't fall for it. She knew her job wasn't to win the battle of interruptions. It was to win the war of facts. Going into this exchange, the media and public expectations leaned heavily toward Miller. He was the seasoned political brawler used to hostile arenas. Crockett, though respected for her intelligence and legal expertise, was still relatively new on the national stage. Many assumed she would struggle to match his force of personality. But here's where the underestimation worked in her favor. By expecting less from her people, were caught off guard when she delivered more. Much more. And this wasn't just about Crockett proving herself. It was about proving a larger point: that preparation, substance, and timing can dismantle even the most aggressive style of politics. Let's replay those first 6 interruptions because they set the foundation for what came next. The first cut off. Miller jumped in almost immediately, setting the tone that he wouldn't let Crockett finish a full thought. It was a power move meant to rattle her. That's the ultimate point. Crockett's reply wasn't just a political win, it was a democratic defense. In an era of rising misinformation, that defense matters more than ever. If you've made it this far, let me ask you something. What stood out the most to you? Was it Miller's relentless interruptions, Crockett's calm but fierce composure, or that one sharp comeback, the 7th that flipped the whole dynamic on its head? Whatever you noticed, here's the key. This story isn't just about them, it's about us. The very same battle between noise and truth, between interruptions and preparation, happens in our daily lives more often than we realize. Think about it. How many times have you been in a meeting, a classroom, or even a family discussion where the loudest person tried to dominate? Maybe it was someone constantly interrupting, talking over others, never letting the facts land. Maybe it was that coworker who speaks with so much confidence that people assume they must be right even when they aren't. Maybe it was a friend or relative repeating something they saw online, and no matter how calmly you tried to explain the truth, they wouldn't stop. In those moments, we all face our own Stephen Miller moments. The question is, do we stay silent, or do we channel our inner Jasmine Crockett? This isn't only about political debates on Capitol Hill. It's about misinformation and manipulation everywhere. On social media, where lies are designed to go viral faster than facts. In business, where flashy presentations sometimes hide shaky foundations. In our personal lives, where gossip and half-truths spread before anyone stops to verify. What Crockett demonstrated is something we all need to remember. Preparation and truth still cut through noise, if we're willing to stand our ground. Imagine this. You're in Crockett's seat. You've been cut off 6 times. You've had your credibility dismissed. Your arguments interrupted, your science tested. Do you give in to the frustration? Do you fire back with anger? Or do you wait, prepare, and then deliver that one line? The one that makes everything stop. That's the heart of this story. Crockett didn't just argue back. She didn't just match volume with volume. She let her preparation do the work. And when her moment came, she used it with precision. So let me throw this question to you. If you had your 7th comeback moment, what truth would you deliver? Engagement isn't passive. Here's the thing. Democracy and even truth in everyday life doesn't survive if we all just sit back and watch. We can't treat it like a Netflix show, waiting for someone else to be the hero. That's why I'm not just telling you a story. I'm inviting you into it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Crockett handled it the right way? Share a time when you stood up to misinformation or someone trying to shout you down. Or tell us honestly, have you ever been the person who relied on volume instead of facts and realized later you were wrong? These aren't just hypotheticals. They're the real-life reflections that make stories like this matter. Every time you speak up, even in small ways, you reinforce the principle that truth isn't fragile. And every time you choose to stay silent when noise takes over you, reinforce the opposite. That's why your engagement here matters. Not just the views, not just the likes, but the actual conversations. The ripple effects of stories like this depend on whether ordinary people decide to carry the lesson forward. Will you let the noise dominate, or will you take the harder, quieter, but more powerful route, standing with facts? From Crockett's moment to yours, Crockett's clash with Miller may have played out on a big stage, but your stage doesn't have to be televised for it to matter. Whether it's in a classroom, a workplace, a community meeting, or even at the dinner table, your woe. Or DS, your preparation, your willingness to defend the truth can silence noise in ways that last. So the real challenge is this. What will you do when it's your turn? Let's build the conversation. Before we wrap up, I want you to pause for just a second and ask yourself, have you ever been interrupted 6 times and still found the strength to deliver your point? Have you ever seen someone else cut through misinformation with calm, fact-driven persistence? What lessons from Crockett's example can you apply to your own life? Starting today, I want to hear your answers. Comment below. Share this video with someone who's dealing with their own Stephen Miller in their life, and don't just watch, join the conversation, because that's how stories like this transform from moments into movements. When the dust settles, the story of Stephen Miller cutting off Jasmine Crockett 6 times, and her 7th comeback silencing him instantly, isn't just about 2 people sparring in the spotlight. It's about the deeper battle playing out across our society. The fight between noise and truth, between spectacle and substance. What Crockett showed in that moment was more than sharp debate skills. She showed resilience, patience, and preparation. She reminded everyone watching that interruptions and volume can only go so far before the weight of facts takes over. And that's the message we need to carry with us. Facts matter more than fiction, and preparation always beats performative confidence. This wasn't just a political clash. It was a demonstration of how truth can stand tall when defended with clarity and courage. And it's a reminder that the same principle applies to our own daily lives. In workplaces where the loudest person isn't always the most correct. In schools where misinformation can spread faster than verified knowledge. On social media, where soundbites often outweigh substance. Every time we choose facts over noise, we're strengthening the foundation of democracy itself. This is where you come in. Stories like this are powerful, but only if we take them as lessons, not just entertainment. Don't just watch. Moments like this, learn from them. Don't just agree with Crockett's courage, practice it. Don't just hope for truth to prevail. Be the person who defends it. Engage in the comments. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And ask yourself, what will I do when it's my turn to stand against noise? Because whether it's in a courtroom, a classroom, or your own living room, that moment will come. Crockett's silence-breaking comeback wasn't just about winning an argument. It was about reminding us all that facts are still stronger than fiction, no matter how many times they're interrupted. So let's carry that lesson forward. Let's prepare. Let's speak up. And let's value truth, even when the noise around us tries to drown it out. And remember, in the end, democracy doesn't defend itself. That's our job. The question is, will you be ready when your moment comes?